What's good, friends? This is episode 51 of the Game Pass Gamecast coming at you. With Sony finally pulling back the curtain on the upcoming PlayStation 5, it also brought a plethora of game reveals, including some big third-party titles that are also coming to the Xbox Series X and PC. So, this week, Mike and I discussed the games we're most excited to play from the reveal event, and really what pointers Microsoft should take as they head towards their own blowout event next month for the Xbox Series X. Also, we now have more information on Microsoft's smart delivery technology that's being touted with the Xbox Series X, including how it manages your save data. But how truly different is it from what we currently have with the Xbox One family of systems? Plus, WB Games is rumored to be on the market, with big names like Take-Two and EA potentially in the mix. But should Microsoft show interest in the publishing home for legendary franchises like Mortal Kombat and the Batman Arkham series? We discuss all of this and much more on the newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz, wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our dope giveaways. Joining me as always, well, I guess I should say, 2 weeks in a row. I didn't mess up the intro. 2 weeks. We're going to have one of those boards up. Anyways.
It was a good run.
It was a good run. Pour one out, you know? Bust out the 40, pour one out. Anyways, I am your host as always, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms. Joining me as always. Now it's time to go into that route. Joining me as always, my partner in crime, Mike P-Pack. Mike, what's good? What's going on? And as always, what have you been playing, man? What's good?
Just living life, enjoying life at week 3,000 under coronavirus fear, and life's just kind of the way it is. But for me, I haven't been playing very many video games. I've been still golfing a lot. But next week looks like it's going to be rainy, so probably a healthy diet of video games in my forecast. However, the games I've been playing most right now have more Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, but I got an invite to the day one Halo 3 Insider build, so I've been basically any day that hardcore is the playlist on there, I've been trying to get some of that in, so it's been a blast.
Talk to me about that a little bit. I know you've been giving me and Adam and our group rave reviews, really for the most part, with the current build of H3 on the Insider build. Kind of give me your Spark Notes-esque version of your notes on, why you think it's that great and, highs, lows, everything in between. Catch me up on everything with it.
This is a game that'll kind of borderline, like, the difference between a remaster and a complete remake, because the game feels a ton different than what it did on Xbox. Now, whether it's because you can play on 100 field of view, you can play all the way up to 120, but I choose to play on 100. Whether it's because you can play up onto 100 point of view instead of the default 70 from the original Xbox version, or what it may be, but the shots seem to register very cleanly online, on matchmaking at least, a lot better than it did on Xbox. Sometimes if I'm playing on East US, it feels like better than Xbox 360's LAN feature that we used to play in tournament, and it was really nice. A little crashy, a little buggy at times. I'll get random crashes, but it's not like in the middle of games or anything. It runs pretty stable. It's just in menus and things of that nature.
And realistically, you kind of expect that in what is, for the most part, a beta build of it.
Right. It's basically finished. They're trying to just iron out some things, and the best way to iron those things out, I think 343 has learned their lesson, and they realize they need to have beta builds. So, overall, really good reviews for the game. It looks great. It sounds great. It plays amazing. I haven't played in any of the campaign missions yet, but they're available on the Insider build. So I just haven't really delved into that too much, but overall, I'm very happy with the experience, and it's a situation where the Xbox version was okay. It kind of fixed that, or didn't fix, but it kind of quenched that nostalgia thirst that someone might have.
It was good enough for most people, I guess.
Yeah, but this version of the game is fantastic, and I'm really excited and happy, and hopefully when it releases, it's as good as it is now. At the very least, I hope it's as good as it is now.
Yeah, definitely. I got my insider invite a couple days after you, and I only played a handful of games because it was only like hardcore was the only playlist in rotation at that point. So I played a couple games of that, and just jumping into hardcore right off the bat, like, I couldn't get my Xbox controller to work with my PC for some reason. I don't know why, and I think it ended up just being the USB cable that I had was
bad.
Well, it was only it didn't support like data transfer or whatever.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it was just like power or whatever. I ended up playing a couple games with controller after that, and it felt great. Like, I definitely agree with everything you're saying. Everything was fluid. Everything was stable. A lot of the things, me being more of a casual Halo multiplayer fan, definitely, it felt great to pick up and play.
And to be fair, I feel like I didn't really give a review on the mouse and keyboard factor of the game, but to be honest, like, out of all of the MCC games that are on PC right now, Halo 3 feels the best with mouse and keyboard. It's relatively smooth, and granted, I still prefer to play on Xbox controller. I was thoroughly surprised at how good the mouse and keyboard really did feel with Halo 3.
Now, what are your feelings between this and El Dorado, the unofficial Halo 3 PC? Halo Online, I guess. What was your, I guess, in comparison to that, for people playing that for so long to get their Halo 3 fix on PC, how do you think this so far stacks up with that?
I think,
and granted, like, it's been a while since I know, at least speaking about myself, I played it, and I would guess also you as well, but
I think, honestly, it's a lot better than El Dorado was. Now, again, that was a game that was kind of the only option. So if you were wanting a certain something out of life, that's where you had to go.
Yeah.
Overall, I think 343 did a fantastic job. It almost, like I said, it almost feels better than the original Xbox 360 game. Like, it just feels amazing, especially online. I know internet and technology has come a long way since then, but even on LAN, it feels better than Halo 3 felt on LAN, I feel. So I have nothing but praise for 343, and I feel like, I'll give credit where credit's due. That's the one thing you'll find out on this podcast. If you've only ever heard me bash 343, there's a reason for that. However, at this point in time, I'm giving them their there's some credit that's due there, and I'm giving it to 343 because the team has had some issues, had some problems with the Xbox version, but this Halo 3 version on the PC is fantastic. Now, we'll wait to see when it comes to full release, because things could go wrong then, and then I'll be able to give you a better idea of how I feel about it then. But as of right now, I feel really good about it.
Great. Awesome to hear. I'm excited to, kind of stay with it and see where it goes, and definitely try it out once the full release for PC happens. I'm definitely going to try it out. But on my end, outside of that, still playing Destiny a little bit. It's kind of like I talked about, a holding pattern, and, with Last of Us Part 2 coming out tomorrow from what we're recording today, it is out if you're listening to this, so that's clearly going to take up my whole weekend, if not more. That's going to be one of those shut the door, close the blinds, I'm not doing anything else, no dishes, no nothing, I'm not doing anything else but playing that this weekend. So outside of that, though, playing some Destiny, and have also too replayed Resident Evil 7. I started that up, as we'll get into it as we go into the show and whatnot and talk about it, with the announcement of RE8, Resident Evil Village, that happened last week. Just wanted to scratch that Resident Evil itch that I've had, so jumped back into that on PC for the first time. Originally I played it on console, so playing it on PC for the first time. And it's crazy to think that, and if you've been listening to the show since the beginning, or whenever now, over 50 episodes, that I talk about Resident Evil 7 being, in my eyes, 3/4 of a perfect horror game, and I really stand by that. For some reason, I always felt like it was much longer than it really was. Like, outside of a couple deaths, and, you know, I think it said my final time was like 7 hours or something like that playing through it, but that also included me, you know, stopping, going down, getting something to drink, talking to somebody. Like, I'm notorious for starting something and playing for like 45 minutes and walking away for half an hour for no reason, like to go do something, not exiting it out. So realistically, it probably took between 5 and 6 hours to beat it. For some reason, I felt like it was always longer, and I think that was because of, and I guess spoilers for a 3+ year old game at this point, but the part on the boat with Mia always felt like it was a really horrible pacing part. Like, it very much took you out of it, and to be honest, replaying it, I didn't feel that the ending with how it ends was that ridiculous compared to the first couple of times I played it. And granted, I haven't played it in quite a while, but, you know, it really didn't feel... The final boss in the house that you're fighting, the kid who ends up being the grandma or whatever, you know, spoilers, like I said, for a 3+ year old game. But that whole part wasn't as ridiculous to me for some reason. I was like, oh yeah, that's not as bad. But the boat part really stuck out to me this time, and I think that's maybe where I kind of hone in on now with... They could have cut that whole part out, or not even cut it out, but like condensed it and made it in, you know, a fourth of what it was.
Sure.
Gotten the point across, but, you know, outside of that, I really stand by that for the first... Once you leave the Baker Mansion, anytime outside of the Baker Mansion, and the Baker Estate, I should say, hurts that game. When you're on the Baker Estate and you're going through the guest house, the main house, Lucas's like testing area, things like that, like that is it's pinnacle horror first person, and I really think a lot of that is unmatched, and I'm really excited to where the future's going, because we'll talk about it in a little bit with RE8 being announced, and where that's going, taking that feel of Resident Evil 7, but also clearly adding some more action to it, in almost an RE4 style. You know, I'm really excited for it, because I'm surprisingly much fonder on Resident Evil 7 than I previously was. I would even say it's probably like, at this point, maybe like 9/10 of a perfect horror game. Like, it's getting up there. So, but that's about... Go ahead.
I think, like, if you take so, like, obviously the boat kind of leaves a really bad taste in your mouth the first time you play through it. Mm-hmm. And there might be those out there that are listening to this that enjoyed that part of the game. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I feel like the collectibles that you could get in the game, mm-hmm. I just felt like it, you know, when you say 9/10, mm-hmm. I feel like that's probably fair. Like, just giving you credit on your assessment, because honestly, there is bad parts, but there's also so much good. Like, I feel like it does deserve maybe a little bit more than, you know, 7/10 or whatever per se, you know?
Yeah, definitely. The only thing really on the collectible end that I really wasn't crazy about, just because I don't think it really was as useful as it maybe wanted to be, was the antique coins, in terms of collecting them to get the upgrades and whatnot like that. Like,
right.
You very naturally find steroids and stabilizers throughout the game, that really, unless you're playing on Madhouse, it's a little different, but like, you can easily survive through most things with what is given in the world without collecting those antique coins. And to get, like, I think the most you can get, or the item that's the most expensive, was the Magnum. And realistically, like, I didn't even go after it because it's like 9 coins, and I'm like, well, I'd rather get the health and stuff like that, because I have weapons that could easily take down, like, anything else that's coming at me. That it's like, I'd be using too much resources to craft ammo for that weapon anyways, and yada yada. Like, meh, I'm not gonna go and do it. So, but I agree. It definitely, you know, it's a little... It's crazy how perspective changes as you play games, you know, multiple times over at some point. But anyways, I don't want to drag too long on a game that's 3 years old, but replayed that, loved it. Definitely one of my favorite games this generation for sure, and really kind of was that, you know, first step forward into what we're seeing current RE as now, which is great, and it makes me very excited for the future. So, Mike, let's get into a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the news this week. A couple notes, big kind of breaking news here. Just announced literally right before we started recording, CD Projekt Red has announced that Cyberpunk 2077 has been delayed from September 17th to November 19th. They talked about this on their official Twitter account, and it reads as so. We've decided to move the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 from September 17th to November 19th. Those of you who are familiar with the way that we make games, that we know that we won't ship something which is not ready. Quote, ready when it's done is not just a phrase we say because it sounds right. It's something we live by even when we know we'll take the heat for it at the same time. At the same time, we are fully aware that making such a decision costs us your trust, and trading trust for additional time is one of the hardest decisions a game developer can make. And despite what we think is the right decision for the game, we'd still like to apologize for making you wait longer. Our intention is to make Cyberpunk 2077 something that will stay with you for years to come. In the end, we hope you understand why we did that. At the same time we are writing these words, Cyberpunk 2077 is finished both content and gameplay-wise. The quests, cutscenes, the skills, and items, all the adventures Night City has to offer, it's all there. But with such an abundance of context and complex systems interweaving with each other, we need to properly go through everything, balance game mechanics, and fix a lot of bugs. A huge world means a huge number of things to iron out, and we will spend the additional time doing that exactly. This week, journalists from all over the world are starting to independently play the game. We are eager and quite stressed to hear their opinions, as well as see your reaction when they publish their previews right after we air Night City Wire on the 25th of June. We hope this will satisfy some of your hunger for the game as we work to polish it for the November launch. Thank you. Totally fine, totally understandable with a game that's that large. To be honest, was kind of expected on my end. I was kind of shocked that it wasn't delayed sooner, especially when everything went down. But, definitely, I want to say take all the time in the world, but at the same time, realistically, a delay this short really only causes more crunch. But it's one of those things, damned if you do, damned if you don't, type of thing. So, but CD Projekt Red or CD Projekt in general, with all their teams, has always been very good at paying their employees, taking care of their employees, especially in times like this. They make sure that they are paid properly and whatnot, and very much so for their extra time that they're putting in. So, following up with that, a little more housekeeping, you can get a free copy of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt from GOG via GOG Galaxy 2.0 if you own it on PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, Origin, Epic Games Store, whether the base title or the Game of the Year edition, depending on what you own. You can get a free copy of it through GOG right now. I'll leave a link to that in the description of the podcast here, wherever you get it at. So make sure you just grab that. Grab a free copy of The Witcher. You never know when you could need it or give it to somebody or whatever. So, and lastly, too, Star Wars Squadrons has been announced. It's a smaller scale dogfighting game akin to X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, Rogue Squadron, things like that, and it'll release on Xbox One, PS4, and PC on October 2nd. There's really not a ton more to throw in on that. I did have a news article pulled up for that, but we're recording before EA Play goes live tonight, because for some reason they're doing it at like 7 o'clock tonight, our time, when traditionally it's usually a little bit earlier. So, more details are going to come out of that. I didn't know if it necessarily warranted a whole news article to go into, but good stuff.
And, I know we have some very loyal listeners, and we love you guys, and we thank you for being here week after week. But, if you like us and you feel inclined to do so, we'd appreciate it if you might just share us with someone you like, or someone that might enjoy the content. Reason being I say this is because we do the show pre-recorded, obviously, and we upload it every week, and we've been really religious at it. But I think both me and Travis would like to get to a point where we could do a live version of the show, and there would be no reason why in the future, when EA's doing a state of play like they are, why me and Travis couldn't fire up a stream and do a live stream of it. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely,
yeah, it's just like that stuff coming down the pipe. So love you guys, and we hope to be giving you live shows at some point, hopefully soon.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, clearly that's things we've talked about before. And
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah. That's it. It's once we have more solidified plans on what is just going on in life right now with the coronavirus and everything like that, and we know when we'll be available for all that, and people's schedules become a little more structured and set in stone, we'll that's something we definitely want to bring up. And obviously, we've almost are now at a year mark of we've been doing this show. So that's definitely things we've talked about, and a few other things. So definitely stay forward for that, because that's definitely something on our mind. And if that is something you guys want to hear, by all means, let us know. By all means, reach out to us wherever, Twitter, the email account that's in our bio on Twitter, which usually I say don't reach out to that because that's more business and stuff like that, but fuck it, why not? I don't really care. Anyways, Mike, let's get into the news this week before we're getting a little too long in the tooth here. Let's start out with Xbox Series X Smart Delivery will also carry your save data across. It's coming from Matt Perslow via IGN. As always, link in the description. Make sure you go over there. Give all these articles a click. It does really mean a lot to the authors. So, Microsoft has offered further details about Smart Delivery, the system that automatically upgrades your Xbox One games to Xbox Series X versions if you play them on the next generation console. Explained in an Xbox Wire news post, Smart Delivery will be available for all Xbox Game Studios games, and third-party developers are able to take advantage of it should they wish. The system automatically takes care of recognizing what console you're on, which data to install, and brings across your saved games too. So, for example, if you're playing Gears 5 on Xbox One, if you buy an Xbox Series X and install Gears 5 on it, the system will automatically install the upgraded, optimized version of the game, and you can continue the campaign from where you last saved on your Xbox One. The post called out these games that are supported on Smart Delivery: Halo Infinite, Cyberpunk 2077, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Destiny 2, Dirt 5, Scarlet Nexus, Chorus, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, Yakuza Like a Dragon, The Ascent, Call of the Sea, Gears 5, Second Extinction, and Metal Hellslinger. Games like Madden 21 were previously confirmed for Smart Delivery too. Microsoft also points out that when a game upgrades, it doesn't mean you lose the original version. You can have both versions, as they are considered as just one game in the system. So, for example, if you have both generations of consoles in separate rooms, you'll simply select whatever game to download, say Halo Infinite, for example, and the system will download whichever version of the game is appropriate, rather than asking you if you want the original or Series X upgraded version. Smart Delivery is notably different to backwards compatibility in that it's about making your old games better on the new console rather than just supported. Xbox Series X will also continue to support backwards compatibility, meaning the console will have thousands of games available to play from launch. So, Smart Delivery really has been, a strong hook for Microsoft to hang the Xbox Series Xbox Series X's hat on since its reveal a few months ago, and really continues to be pushed heavily as we get closer to the launch this holidays. But Jess Corden from Windows Central actually put out a tweet earlier this week that I think a lot of people are overlooking. So it says, "Don't know why Xbox is acting like Smart Delivery is this new amazing thing. It's literally the same system we have already have on Xbox One consoles for delivering different assets between S and X versions of the game. Feel like it's more designed to ramp up pressure on publishers," end quote. He also follows up by saying, got a feeling many publishers, EA, Activision, etc., are pushing back on this system, and Microsoft is trying to get ahead of the pack to put the guilt on publishers who actively try to sell you two games that have different configuration files. And really, now that it has been confirmed that the Xbox Series X will utilize the same OS as the Xbox One by The Verge's Tom Warren, it makes Jez's narrative much more believable. So, with that being said, Mike, do you think what is basically a repackaging of tech that Microsoft has been using for years now as a, really a marketing tactic, would that be enough to strong-arm most third-party publishers, to say, hey, this is what we're doing, you're either on board or you're off, and, kind of force them to do that? Or will we see more publishers still taking that stance that EA has with, hey, you're going to be able to upgrade your game if you buy Madden 21 this year on Xbox One and it comes out before the Xbox Series X launches, and when that game comes out with it, and you buy an Xbox Series X, you want to put it in and it just work, you're going to have a limited time window to do that, to ensure really more copies are sold. Do you think that's more of the route that we're going to see, or do you think Microsoft has that power to kind of say, you're either going to do this or you're not going to be on our console?
I think the narrative, given where it kind of seems like Microsoft's trying to strong arm devs into, kind of agreeing to allow their game to be using this technology, I definitely agree that that's the case. definitely is something where it seems like Microsoft is looking to not like. So let's say you're a prospective Xbox buyer. Like, let's say you wanted to buy an Xbox right now for some reason. Well, a majority of the consumers out there are going to be like, you know what, like the new Xbox is coming out. Why wouldn't I just wait? You know, I'll have to repurchase the games. There's no reason for me to buy an Xbox One right now. And what Xbox is trying to do is like, you know, they're trying to protect themselves, but they're also trying to protect the consumers, which I'm very happy about because it definitely feels like they're kind of doing us a service because obviously certain developers don't listen to consumers as it is when it comes to just how they handle transactions, microtransactions, things of that nature. And then you couple on top of that the fact that some of these companies have the opportunities to sell games twice to a vast majority of the consumer base. It definitely feels like Microsoft's kind of stepping up to the plate. And while they're using old technology and kind of pretending like it's new to kind of sell it to consumers, which whether that's ethical or not, we can save that debate for another podcast because I guess so is it unethical? I don't think so, because I was just about to say like, you know, we could talk about it elsewhere, but we have covered, I think we've talked about ethics at length on this show at times. I think it's ethical because at the end of the day, the technology they're telling you about, like when they're saying the smart switch and everything, when the author, slipping my mind, who wrote about that it's old technology?
Jez Corden.
So, you know, when he writes that it's just old technology and they're touting it as this new stuff, I mean, as someone who's pretty diehard Xbox and really into tech, I didn't really care or know how the games would transfer from Series X or from Xbox One X to the other, you know, versions of the console. So to me, it's new. Like, even though they've had it implemented, that's still great to know. And also as consumers, this kind of helps certain developers. A developer like, you know, Bungie comes to mind because now instead of people putting off buying Destiny 2 until the new console comes out, they can buy it on their console now and their saved data is going to move over. And who doesn't want to hear that kind of thing? So
right, and they've already confirmed too that, hey, we're not going to double charge you. Like, you have this game, like, yeah, of course we're going to buy into smart delivery with that too, but also on, you know, with PS5 too, you're not going to have to worry about that. You're automatically, whatever you bought in Destiny, like, I ended up buying the expansion, the upgrade edition on Steam for Destiny 2, just because I was having a lot of fun with it. It was free to play. Like, I put in, you know, 10, 15 hours into it, and I'm like, you know what, for $30 or whatever, yeah, I'll buy the expansion. There's, you know, I get dozens and dozens and dozens of more content for $30.
Exactly.
Like, hell yeah, I'll absolutely do that. And especially now being an independent studio and free to play. I mean, they were independent before, but having that publishing deal now, being on their own and everything like that, like, I'm very wanting to support developers like that, you know, in that situation. But with that being said, like, if I did that on console now, I don't have to worry about that because it's just going forward. They're like, we're not going to double charge you. Why would we double dip you? Like, so it makes sense.
To me, it's just like, I feel like, I'll put a bow on this topic, or on my opinion anyway. It's a situation where big publishers are probably hate this, but someone like Bungie, who's a smaller developer, it sounds great because not only are they going to make their money now, but if someone buys the game now and loves it and then asks their friends to buy it, like, it's just a win-win for the small publishers. It's a big win for the gamers. The only people that are going to lose are people like big publishers like EA, Activision would be at a loss with this, 2K, like people like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, there's a fire siren going on. I've tried to mute myself a little bit on it. Should be wrapping up, but no, totally. And the thing with this is too, a lot of this is all on the back ends as it is already. Like, whenever, say, the Gears 5 example, you know, you're not, for sure, at least in my opinion, I can't see it's all going to be like, you're going to download those assets not from the disc. You're going to have to, it's basically, your disc is going to act like you putting a key into a lock to unlock something. Whenever I put in my disc, as it does for, you know, most AAA games that you buy now that are physical, you put the disc in and there's still like a day one update or a day one patch or something, or, you know, for on the Series X, PS4, whatever you have, most of the time when you put a game in, it automatically downloads those additional files that are for that specific console. That we're definitely just going to see that going forward. That I'm sure there's going to be, I pop in my Gears 5 disc on, day one of the Series X's launch. I'm going to be greeted with, hey, you have to download this, and you're going to download. So it's going to be very similar. I don't think it's unethical, because there still is a difference with it to an extent. It's a very similar technology. I think that's more what I read from Jez. I don't want to put words in his mouth. And
sure.
He does
totally.
Really great work over at Windows Central. We quote him all the time on here. To me, it seems like he's trying to say it's a very similar tech but they're now just promoting it, saying, we're doing something that not a lot of other people are doing. Especially, this just keeps leaning into their mindset of the Xbox brand becoming more of a platform akin to PC, where you're just getting iterative consoles. It's almost like that. It's like a hybrid of what we talked about a couple weeks ago in Party Chat, when we were saying, do you think this upcoming gen will be the last true, traditional game console generation, where this is starting to blend that already, where it doesn't matter what Xbox you're playing on, they just want you playing on it, just like Steam. It doesn't matter what system you have. If your system can run it, great, cool, here you go. It doesn't matter. It's more of a platform. So
sure,
to me, that just funnels back into that. But in terms of strong-arming, I don't think Microsoft wants to put any third-party publisher in that, at least willingly, in that position, because then that potentially annexes them from doing business with them. Because, there's so many of these third-party publishers. As much as we, shit on EA at times and, get a little offended by some of the things they do, their games sell a shit ton. Madden sells a shit ton. FIFA sells a shit ton. And especially on Xbox, where that's one of the best sellers month in and month out, especially for 6 months of the year when we're talking football. Same with FIFA, with soccer and whatnot, and NHL, and then also their other their Star Wars games and things like that all do sell well. That it's Microsoft wouldn't want to annex themselves from that. So I don't think they're going to necessarily strong arm. I think it's going to be they want to put developer or these publishers in a position where they just want to naturally do it. I don't think it's going to be a stressful thing, because soon enough it's going to get to the point where we're going to be 2 years down the road, and then we will have Xbox Series X exclusives, where you can only play this on Xbox Series X, just like, and this is, I would say, normally with any other console, but since it's so blended, it's like, the newest iPhone, for example. You get the newest iPhone, or you had the oldest, say you had an iPhone 6 or something, now you're on the iPhone 10. Well, there's some app that you just wanted to play, so you upgrade your phone because your iPhone 6 couldn't play it anymore. Just the tech that's supported in that and that's non-upgradable, you just can't use. So it won't properly function on there, or at least to a degree that they feel comfortable publishing it on there for you to potentially buy your money and then get into a lawsuit if it doesn't work, or yada yada, So I don't think it's ever going to get to a situation like that, because Microsoft knows they'll annex themselves from a fuck ton of money. And as we know, Microsoft has a fuck ton of money. So it's one of those things that I just truly want to see them get to that. I think it's more amicable than, with something like this with EA, it's going to be a short-term thing that I don't think is going to be very long until they're just publishing games or developing games strictly for the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, where smart delivery might not be that big of a situation for them in general, where, yeah, some of their cross-gen titles, there will be a little, that's a little shady, but I just think the market itself will iron that out, where I think Microsoft I think they'll let them kind of do their thing for a little bit, because they know at the end of the day, they don't want to lose those sales, and two,
sure,
they're making something that I think most publishers will want their developers to just start developing into in general, because it's just the way of the quote-unquote the way of the future, type of thing. So,
sure. No, I just think I don't think it might not be a straight up strong arm tactic, which
I think guilt. I literally think guilt is the right, a little bit of that, they're just trying to guilt them a little bit into doing that. Well, you know, Activision is doing this now, and blah blah blah. Like, I don't mean to dogpile on EA, but like, in terms of they're the ones who have came out right now and said, hey, we're doing a limited time thing on it. We're not. They're the only ones who have done that so far.
Yeah, for me, it's just like EA is not gonna do anything as crazy as like, you know, not selling their product on the Xbox or anything insane. So, but you know, we can continue on.
No, definitely. So, Mike, let's head into the next one here. Let's talk about every game from the PS5 reveal that's coming to the Xbox Series X. This is a good write-up by Matt Brown over on Windows Central, as always, link in the description. The PlayStation 5 recently received its full unveiling, featuring over 24 titles headed to the next generation. It provided the first deep dive into the games targeting Sony's upcoming console, wrapped with our early look at the box itself ahead of its scheduled holiday launch. Sony's showing featured both in-house PlayStation Studio titles coupled with an extensive roster of third-party talent, and despite many locked to PlayStation 5 exclusivity, a handful of unveiled games are also targets Microsoft's Xbox Series X console. We've wrapped up every game showcased at the PlayStation 5 unveiling and headed to the next-gen Xbox. While Sony's PlayStation 5 event flashed the exclusivity tagline across the majority of titles, many games could be headed to Xbox Series X. Projects like Hitman 3, Resident Evil Village, and Pragmata launch on Xbox Series X simultaneously to PS5 with no disclosed ties to specific platforms. The remaining launch titles as time exclusives committed to the PS5 and sometimes PC, but with the opportunity for exclusivity to expire with time. While timed exclusivity doesn't translate to a definite Xbox Series X launch, it provides an overview of titles with futures potentially beyond PS5. So these are all the either timed exclusives or just straight up, hey, these are launching day and date alongside on Xbox Series X. Same with PS5. So we got Bugsnax, which is a timed exclusive, Deathloop, a timed exclusive, Ghostwire Tokyo, timed exclusive, Godfall, timed exclusive, Goodbye Volcano High, another timed exclusive. Then, shocker, Grand Theft Auto 5 coming to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Hitman 3, which is a non-exclusive. Jet, The Far Shore, timed exclusive. Kenna, Bridge of Spirits is a timed exclusive. Little Devil Inside, a timed exclusive. NBA 2K21 coming day and date. Oddworld's Soulstorm is a timed exclusive. Pragmata, the new IP from Capcom, is launching day and date on both systems. Project Athea is a timed exclusive. Resident Evil 8 Village is not a timed exclusive and will be coming day and date to Xbox Series X. Solar Ash and Stray are both timed exclusives as well. So, as we implored listeners last week to watch the PlayStation 5 reveal event because there were clearly going to be third-party titles that would show up at the reveal and would be revealed that were coming to Xbox Series X and PC as well, and to no one's surprise, there was. So, first, I want to kick it off by simply asking, Mike, what stuck out to you in terms of games you saw that you were excited for that are from third-party publishers, and, you know, what pointers really should Microsoft be taking in terms of presentation heading into their July event for their first-party studios, and what can be, you know, anticipated to be a very similar themed event that PlayStation just did, because Sony, rightfully so, deserves a fucking shit ton of credit for how well that event went. It was a great presentation. Overall, just an excellent, in terms of the situation we're currently in with the pandemic, that was an excellent presentation in how you should present not only your games as in game, here's the console type of thing. So what games stuck out to you that are third parties, and what pointers really do you think Microsoft should be taking from that presentation?
I think the biggest thing, the game that I'm looking most forward to, it's probably no surprise to anyone, but the new Resident Evil. Boy, does that game look just amazing! I'm so excited for that. I hope that, you know, it comes out really good. Hitman 3, I'm interested to see what they do with that. Just because I think it'll be interesting, you know, to play a new Hitman game and see where they go with it, because their service Hitman game I don't think did as well as they thought it was going to do. And I'm excited to see what they do with that. Changing gears from the games, because, I mean, I could just gush over a Resident Evil game right now, because it feels like Capcom's just doing everything right when it comes to that franchise. I know everyone's kind of disappointed with 3. But,
but see, 3 was
2 was so good. It's like I don't know what you want them to do. You
now
know
that
what I mean?
now that we know, and unofficially, but it's been confirmed by multiple sources that I feel pretty confident saying it, that we know that those games were clearly one developed in tandem, but were also developed to be a package like RE Remake 2 and 3. That makes so much more sense to me that it like of why that game was what it was. Like, it clearly was, you're missing the replayability that you get with RE2, that makes so much more sense to bundle both of those games together, especially because they play off of each other so well that you're playing off a different timeline of events of what's going on with Claire and Leon's story with Jill. So, like, that makes so much more sense to tie those together. But, not to interrupt you, but go on.
No, that's
but
okay.
I agree.
The biggest thing I kind of think about when I look at their presentation is they got away with basically giving little to no information about the console, but everyone was gushing over it because of the way it looks. You know what I'm saying? Like, and when I say they didn't give up very much information, they didn't give up the biggest point, which is the price. Nobody cares what price that console is; they're buying it. And I think that's something that Microsoft should really take down in their notes is like, Sony got away with presenting their console, telling the consumer, you know, what it's going to do, how it looks, and you know, what games are going to be on it. And they didn't even spoil the price, and people are already wanting to buy it.
Yeah.
So they could come out and say it's going to be $900, and there's going to be a ton of people out there that would probably pay it and not even think twice. You know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest thing for me that if I was Microsoft, I would take away is it's how you present the information for sure. And Sony knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, definitely. And realistically, Microsoft, in my opinion, their E3 press conferences that they do compared to, you know, their Inside Xbox, like, live magazine event that they usually do, they're apples and oranges, because their E3 events, I think, are always, or at least the past couple years, have been fucking stellar in terms of how they present it, because they want the games to speak for themselves. Now, granted, they have a ton of third parties that usually, they ink those third party deals that are usually shown there outside of, now it seems like Call of Duty and Destiny are the two that PlayStation usually grabs up for their E3 events, or because of their promotional ties that they already have. But in terms of other major third party games like Elden Ring, we saw Hitman before, and Batman traditionally, like things like that I think a lot of us expected to be at that gameplay reveal event for the Series X, that clearly now obviously shacked up with Microsoft completely, or with Sony with, you know, their PS5 reveal event. Clearly, I get it, but, you know, I think people were traditionally looking for something like that with that gameplay reveal event last month, that because their E3 events are usually so good, because they let the games do the talking for themselves. It's not a deep dive on, hey, let's talk to developers on this and that. That's usually not what it was, because they usually just say, hey, we're here to talk about games, because they've seen that's worked for Sony in the past. And Sony didn't change up anything. They literally were like, let's talk games. Games. And that's exactly what Microsoft has to do to come out. And I've heard through the grapevine some really, really, really strong things from Xbox insiders and other people in the Xbox community that are in the know, that feel very strong about this July event. Not just because they're Xbox fans, of course, but, you know, people who cover all aspects of this entertainment medium that say Microsoft is looking to make this July event a statement and come out and try to make this like, this is going to be the buzz for next gen. Like, you're going to look at this and say Microsoft came to play.
Right.
So, you know, I don't want to obviously put anything on record just because things aren't, you know, it isn't close enough to that event and whatnot like that. But the things I heard and seen and whatnot, I have full faith that Microsoft is going to do well with this event. In terms of games that I liked from the PS5 event, like, I guess wrapping up with the event side, if you ask me, games. I think the price is something that should be shown. I think the closer you get to launch, I mean, we're getting into July and this thing's launching 4 months after that, probably. I mean, I would think it's time to show a price no matter what, even if you don't want to, even if you're trying to hold out for Sony, fuck it, you got to show the price at that point.
Right.
So, to me, if you have the price in there, I think that's the best thing. But in terms of the actual press conference from Pointers, literally games. Give me a reason to invest in this console, because I haven't found one yet, to be quite honest. I can play all my games on PC that are on Game Pass and whatnot. I want to have a reason, and Sony just showed me a fucking reason to go out and buy that system. And it was a fucking good reason, a lot of good reasons. So, but in terms of games, go ahead.
I think Microsoft has the opportunity to use the fact that they're after Sony as an advantage. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that.
And Sony did that last generation, going after really going after Microsoft in terms of Microsoft's blowout that they did on the system, similar to what PlayStation just did. So roles are kind of reversed now in that, where now Microsoft has that chance to go out and kind of hit one out. But kind of one follow-up, I guess I should talk about game that I'm really excited for. Clearly, Resident Evil 8 Village, one of my most anticipated games is from a third-party developer. But outside of that, the two that I do want to talk about as kind of a follow-up before we move on to our last news article here, Mike. One of the biggest surprises to me really was the timed exclusivity on Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo, which were two major releases for Bethesda under their publishing arm coming up soon, considering Starfield is still sleeping for now. Who knows? We may see that pop up at the July event, or even something with, I've heard rumors of potentially a Bethesda event, even though they're not doing an E3 style event, them holding some kind of smaller event where they potentially talk about that and do a little bit deep dive on Deathloop and Ghostwire and stuff like that. So, but for now, we still know nothing about it, and we don't think it's coming this year, or at least, maybe next year. So, and Elder Scrolls 6 isn't fucking, it's way down the line, and it ain't coming anytime soon. So,
is it ever coming?
Yeah, for real. It definitely will, but it sounds like we're at least 4 or 5 years out. So, but these were really two big releases planned for them from, critically acclaimed studios, Arcane, who did Dishonored and Prey, and Tango Works, who did the Evil Within series. So, do you think that timed exclusivity could hurt their sales and buzz in the long run? Or, Mike, do you think, taking a big exclusivity check, like you would imagine they did from, Sony, did help, do you imagine that they did help them space out that discussion of their games, and having potentially 2 release dates on separate home consoles, saying, hey, we're going to get this first big buzz launch with Deathloop when it comes out in 2020, and then a year from now, whenever the timed exclusivity's up, we're going to be able to be in the conversation again when it comes to, on Xbox One and PC. I think it's coming PC with PlayStation 5, but for this example, okay, well, we're going to have another chance to just be back in the public again with this game.
I think the timed exclusivity that they're using is actually pretty interesting. I think it's really cool, personally. I think it's great because if it's timed exclusive, there's a chance, it seems to me, that it could have just straight up been an exclusive, and it means that more gamers are going to get exposed to their game, and that's terrific. And I think how publishers should see it is like, they got the money from Sony for being like first released on Sony. And yeah, it kind of sucks to be an Xbox owner if you wanted to play that game, but you also get to see the game played for a little while before you make your decision on it, whether or not you want to purchase it. So I think it's kind of like, it's definitely weird and interesting, but I'm really excited for the, the fact that timed exclusivity is becoming a little bit more popular. I think it's really cool. And I don't think it could really be a huge loss for the publishers unless you knew like the game was just going to sell like crazy. But again, if that was the case, I'm sure they wouldn't take an exclusivity deal at all. You know what I mean?
Right. No, totally. I definitely agree that, it's, to me, it's understandable because these are 2 brand new IP that you're dealing with. It's not, hey, previously with both studios, hey, we got Dishonored, we have Prey, even though that was kind of like a spiritual successor type reboot thing, with Arcane, and then Evil Within with Tango Works. It's not like, hey, we're bringing the new sequels to those specifically to PlayStation 5, where you don't have to do much with that. People already know those. These are two brand new IP that almost, it reminds me of a similar fashion of Konami with Metal Gear. Obviously, potentially not at the, who the hell knows, how popular these games could get, but I feel pretty safe saying not going to get to the level of Metal Gear Solid love that we've seen for that franchise. But because of that being originally a console exclusive on PlayStation until, sequels came out, and then it came to Xbox and GameCube, and then to, so on and so on, this current generation even, that it was third party. But it's thought of as a PlayStation franchise for so long because it originated on a PlayStation console. So for so long it's been tied to that I think it has the opportunity for these IP to have that feeling with it, almost like Tomb Raider, where you think Tomb Raider, and so many people do think, either at least on console, they think of the PlayStation because that's where they were playing it originally. So to me, that's the exciting part about this. But in terms of really the sales and buzz about this, I still think, especially with Deathloop, people are going to have that. People are naturally going to buy the PlayStation 5 quickly. Microsoft still has a very uphill battle. I think they're going to be in a much better position this time around because they're saying all of, 99% of the right things and doing so many consumer-friendly things that it's going to be the best value, I think, bang for your buck type of thing. But at the same time, naturally, most people are just going to go and buy a PlayStation 5. If they had a PlayStation 4, which the vast majority of gamers did this generation, they're going to go buy a PlayStation 5. So I don't think their sales are going to hurt that much, and especially with how well-known Arcane and Tango Works are within the gaming community. They were never going to sell those crazy blockbuster numbers to begin with. Both of those games, really, they're niche. They're very artsy niche games to begin with, like in terms of compared to a lot of bigger third-party titles. So I don't think it's going to hurt their sales. I would love to see how big that check was to Bethesda for those. I would love to see how much money they spent on that to get those games to come there exclusively to PlayStation 5. Because it had to be fucking through the roof. Especially with a publisher like Bethesda. I just keep going back. It just shocks me that with how much they're relying and where Bethesda is as a publisher, not, from their Bethesda Games studios developed in-house games like Fallout and Elder Scrolls and whatnot, and Starfield. From their publishing end, it just shocks me that they want to get this game on as many consoles as possible. That's why they have games on Stadia and Switch, additionally to PC and two major consoles, Xbox One and PlayStation 4. That's why they are putting these on everything, because they just want people to fucking play their games no matter where they are, and that's why they put money into trying to make these games run. So it just shocks me that they actually did go that route. I don't think it'll necessarily hurt their sales in the long run, because they'll have that nice check from Sony for the timed exclusivity. But additionally too, these games were never going to sell blockbusters, and I don't mean that in a bad way. They're just niche products. So I'm excited for them still, no matter what. You can still play them on PC, so our audience, that works out great. But Mike, let's head into our last news article this week. AT&T is offering Warner Brothers game division for sale, supposedly. This comes from Dean Takahashi via VentureBeat, as always, link in the description. This dropped really, I think it might have been Friday, literally after we put out this last week's show. So AT&T is offering its Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment division up for sale, according to a CNBC report, as well as our own reporting. Citing unnamed sources, CNBC said Friday that potential bidders include Take-Two Interactive, Electronic Arts, and Activision Blizzard. If the sale happens, it would be a major change for Hollywood and its relationship with the industry, as most major studios are opting to get out of the game business, reversing a trend from earlier decades where they loaded up on dev studios. Two sources confirmed to GamesBeat that the reporter is correct in terms of the division being up for sale. WB Interactive Entertainment has not commented on this. Both EA and Take-Two declined to comment. Activision Blizzard did not respond to a request for comment. CNBC said the price would be about $4 billion, but One of my sources said the price offered was $2 billion. A major game company said it was not interested in the purchase because WB Interactive only immediately makes money and it does not own some of the major franchises that are core of its major games. It does not, for instance, own the Harry Potter license as it is not clear if author J.K. Rowling would approve a transfer of the license from Warner Brothers to another game company. Nor does it own the DC Comics property, which the Batman, Arkham, and Injustice franchises use. No deal is assured or imminent, CNBC said. WB Interactive has 10 game studios, which David Haddad heads. The company makes a wide array of games such as Harry Potter, Lego, Mortal Kombat, Batman, Arkham, and Game of Thrones. It also has quirky mobile titles like Golf Clash, and this year it's launching Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, if I spit that out. WB Interactive Studios include TT Games, Rocksteady Studios, NetherRealm Studios, Monolith Productions, WB Games Boston, Avalanche Software, Playdemic, WB Games Montreal, WB Games San Francisco, and WB Games San Diego. WB Interactive stands out as one of the few successes in the marriage of Hollywood and games, and it is kind of a crown jewel of the games business. So, in a weird way, by pure chance, we touched on this a bit last week during Party Chat when I mentioned in a perfect world I'd love to see Microsoft acquire the Mortal Kombat franchise or even WB Games, when we were asking, what are real or unrealistic, what would you love to see in terms of an IP studio, whatever, be acquired by Microsoft in our open discussion question. And now it looks like the prize pig may be up for grabs. So I was feeling, I know, I was thinking, maybe I should say I really want $1 million. I really want somebody to fucking pay off my school loans. See how that works out. But, while there's no noise surrounding Microsoft having an interest in the WB game sale, and especially considering its lack of inclusion of the DC and Harry Potter IPs, how outlandish would it be for Microsoft to enter the conversation, considering, one, their desire to acquire top-tier studios and IP currently, alongside, really with, two, their dump truck of fucking money that they have? Who would you likely see the gaming division being bought from if it wasn't by Microsoft, by the list of suitors that, the article mentioned? Outside of that, but do you think it's even, do you think it's realistic for Microsoft to enter this conversation? Because a lot of people have been tagging Phil Spencer in tweets regarding this, saying, Phil, check this out, type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a huge moment in the gaming landscape, it feels like. I don't know. I know whenever my current employer was looking to acquire another business, it had to go through the Supreme Court because there was worries about monopoly being formed. So I don't know if like Microsoft or Sony being in the running would justify would be considered like a monopoly or anything crazy of that nature. I mean, hearing the list of possible suitors is like almost like nightmare fuel. Like, I don't think anyone would want any of them to get it. No. To be honest, maybe Take-Two, but other than that, that's about it.
Take-Two isn't as egregious. Now, granted, I say that with an asterisk next to it because we've seen in the past some asinine, ridiculous microtransactions that have been added to NBA 2K. But outside of that, for the most part, you know what you're getting with the Take-Two game. You see a lot of 2K games, you see a lot of things like BioShock, you see a lot of things like Borderlands, XCOM, where, of course, they're going to have DLC supported by this. Of course, they're going to have some options for you to buy into, but even something like Borderlands that is very much like looter-shooter granddad that, really leans into that, a lot of those trends that are going on in the games industry with games as a service, usually really aren't that egregious. So I'm not completely thrown out on Take-Two. Now, EA, yes, not crazy about that, obviously, and Blizzard, I'm sure you're going to touch on a little bit with Activision Blizzard.
Yeah, it's just, there's not, none of these game dev studios that are in the running sound particularly attractive to me to have such a huge share of game devs. I mean, you're talking about, now you're starting to mess with my Mortal Kombat franchise, which feels like it's starting to figure itself out again, especially with, the new Mortal Kombat 11 and Aftermath, which I haven't gotten to play yet. I haven't purchased it yet, but that's coming soon. It feels like they're really just starting to get their legs back under them, and they're starting to kind of, redefine who they were, especially through the 2000s. And there's, a blanket. It's such a wide array of game devs that, like, the thought of EA potentially getting these is just terrifying to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, all things considered, if Microsoft really wanted to put themselves in a position to say fuck you to Sony, they would purchase it because they can. Like, they have the money. They would purchase it just because they have the fuck you money per se.
Right.
So it'd be nice to see them pick it up, but the most likely out of all the suitors, as far as like monetary wise, you would think would be EA would have the most amount of money to just throw at this. But again, I don't think there's a real clear like preference for me out of all these choices.
No, like I said, Take-Two probably
The best, right?
Yeah, I think the best. And they do cite that there are a couple companies that they reached out to that wanted to, or at least that they've heard that wanted to remain anonymous with everything going on, because that does lead to expectations. Then if it's leaked that, hey, Activision's involved with this, that creates this perception around their fans saying, holy shit, Activision and Blizzard are going to buy WB games now. We're gonna look at all the IP that they're going to have in there now, included with that. But the big thing to me is, it doesn't include, outside of Mortal Kombat. I mean, realistically, you look at this.
With no Batman,
no Harry Potter, because the Harry Potter RPG game that got leaked to like a year and a half ago is very real, and I'm sure it was going to be revealed at WB's event that they were supposedly going to have at E3 this year, but it's now being held. We could very well see that at Xbox's event later, next month. It's very real. So you look at that and it's like, okay, well, you don't have that. You don't get that. Where does that game go? The Batman IP, Injustice, that's all gone. NetherRealm loses an IP from that. Rocksteady doesn't even have their major IP or their major game franchise that they work on. And a half of NetherRealm, presumably, if you're looking at, it having two teams, one for Mortal Kombat, one for Injustice, they're losing it. What do you really get out of that $4 billion price tag? One, I don't blame whoever threw out the price of saying, hey, we're going to offer $2 billion, but even then, like, I don't think that's necessarily, like, worth the money. That is a lot of fucking money to throw for not a lot in return. Now, granted, Mortal Kombat sells great. Not going to discount that by any means, but outside of that, the Lego games sell decent, but, like,
yeah,
there's nothing to hang
like
your hat on. Like, Batman talks to a wide array of people, not just video game players. You get very close to, if not more than, because it's, third party and it's on a multiple, dozens of different platforms, you get to that Marvel Spider-Man level of hype with Marvel Spider-Man PS4. Like, you get those, that's a thing that reaches so many people, movie fans, comic book fans, not just gamers. So, like,
Does it feel like a talent poach? Like, does it almost feel like the price tag is being put on the talent at those studios versus the actual
potentially.
games?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, you look at NetherRealm. NetherRealm, led by Ed Boon, is one of the... It's a grandfather in gaming at this point. I mean, you're talking about, like I said, prize pig. Like, you're getting so much from that. But at the same time, that does raise questions, though, with... You look at Rocksteady, and Rocksteady is fantastic. Do not get me wrong. But they've only done one thing for so long now, for the past decade plus now, that they put out, for the last probably the last close to 15 years with development time and whatnot, they've only put out one series. So, take that away, that's their acclaim, is that series. What do they have? I'm not saying that they wouldn't put out anything great, but they haven't proven themselves with anything else. You look at, not to bring up another, PlayStation franchise, but you look at Naughty Dog. At least Naughty Dog has two different IP that they're running with. They have The Last of Us and Uncharted, and potentially
And
going
I mean,
to do another. And they proved that they can do 2 different styles of a third-person action game, at least, type of thing.
yeah, and Naughty Dog Naughty Dog definitely had.
And I mean, that's currently.
They had Crash Bandicoot.
But before
stuff, so it's like they were old, you know. They
Crash
were like
Bandicoot
old
and Jack and Dexter. Like, it's, you know, we haven't seen that modern evolution, I guess, for them. So, to me, the price tag's way too high. But if if they're bullish enough to say, okay, we're going to sell this, or we're not going to really produce much, like, or we're going to lower that or whatever, like, we're going to start dismantling things. To me, this is the one person who can, or the one company that can come in there and back up that bill in a logical way is Microsoft, considering they talked about, like, they were rumored to potentially be in looks to purchase EA before. And EA is even, like, fucking, obviously if EA is interested in buying WB games, like, but to me, the big thing is it just doesn't have, like 2 or 3 of your biggest components of what makes WB games so attractive. And that's Batman, that's Harry Potter, that's all these things that people have been clamoring for, these IP that they can use. So,
when you first read this headline, you like gasp because you're like, oh my god,
right?
EA is gonna make Batman, and then you start to read and you're like, holy shit, they're getting nothing for this.
Right, exactly. Like, it's like, that's kind of a waste of money. Not a waste of money, but like that's a lot of money to pay for. Realistically, you're only getting a fourth of what you would think you would with it. So it's like buying a car almost. Like you see that, wow, that's a low sticker price, but you're getting like a fraction of what the car that's being shown in the commercial is, type of thing. But Mike, it's gonna about do it for our news. Let's head into Party Chat. And if you are new to the show, it's an old segment that we're bringing back, but we're adding a little bit of twist to it now, each and every week. So we're going to propose one question each week at the end of the show that we want to discuss. Could be as simple as, what's your favorite story beat of a game? Or, you know, what have you been playing during quarantine? Or it could be more in depth as to why the stigma, this negative stigma around gaming even exists still. And really, after answering ourselves, we want to kick it over to you and start a discussion. And for you to tweet your responses or email or whatever, YouTube comments as well, all that jazz, you get it, to the question that we have on the show over on Twitter at GPGC Podcast, our YouTube channel, what have you. And we'll read some of the responses the following week. So last week's question, what is more important to see at what appears to be now Microsoft's next event related to the Series X? Halo Infinite gameplay, the Initiatives project, or the price of the console? And I chose this one. Like I said, usually don't say, hey, go and email us, but we'll take emails, whatever, that's fine. This comes from Carl Easton over on our email. While Halo Infinite gameplay is super important to see before buying it, I think most general consumers will want to know the price as far ahead of release so they can plan adequately if they're planning to purchase it on release, especially given the current economic situation. And to me, I think the more I thought about that, you know, my gut said, I think it was Halo Infinite gameplay. I think, I can't remember. But the more I think about this over this week, like, getting Carl's response and whatnot, like, to me, I think it is price. I think it's, like we kind of mentioned earlier in the show, the longer you wait, you're getting to July. That's only 4 months probably from launch because you're talking holiday 2020. And usually that's late October, early November, something like that. So I don't know, man. Especially if you're doing October any later than that, like earlier than that, that's 3 months out. Like, that's a lot to ask of people at that point, if you ask me. So I totally agree. I think that's a great response personally. And it is interesting though, because I think the more we hear about this event coming in July, I think it's going to be interesting. And I think it's going to tell a lot of truly where Microsoft's headed this generation. I think this is really going to be, they have the chance to hit a grand slam right now. The bases are starting to get loaded, but at the same time, Sony just brought it back, and we're going to, you know, extra innings right now. It could be a walk-off situation. So I feel good about the event, but there's still a lot of unknowns, and I think at this point, even if Sony doesn't announce their price for the PS5 before that, now's the time. Like, that July date is, I think, the latest you can go, personally. So this week's question, though, what do you think the biggest change to Halo Infinite is going to be, with it being considered a quote-unquote spiritual reboot or spiritual successor or something like that, where it is clearly a new new life to this series, where they're going in a little bit of a different direction. This could be gameplay, presentation, UI, etc. Anything and everything is on the table. So, Mike, I'm kicking it over to you first. What do you think the biggest change to Halo Infinite is going to be?
Honestly, I think when they talk about a spiritual reboot,
Mm-hmm.
I know people that hear this might think, oh, they're going to go a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think 343 realized, like, what they have with Halo and what they are potentially going to lose. I think when I hear spiritual reboot, instead of going with the fishy Locke v Master Chief storyline that they did
Mm-hmm.
and everything they did in Halo 5, when I hear spiritual reboot, especially in terms of the game now, I think solely it's going to be a lot of gameplay. It's going to go back to hopefully classic gameplay, and this could be me being hopeful, but I hope when they say spiritual reboot, they mean getting back to classic Halo gameplay and classic Halo storyline, which means Chief trying to find Cortana, all that stuff made sense, but I think Chief is going to be the protagonist again. And I think when you get Master Chief being the protagonist again, I think you're going to get something that, while is going to be a spiritual successor to what 343 did, it's going to be kind of like a harkening back, hopefully, to what made the game so great and what made it so beloved. And I think that's what 343 is going to be aiming for. I think when we see the game, hopefully in July, we're going to see a game that looks a lot like what we're used to with Halo. And, we're going to see a battle royale. And I think when it comes to spiritual successor, I think that's also what they're going to be talking about, is I think it's going to have a battle royale mode. At this point, you've been making the game for 5 years. You've seen how big Fortnite's gotten. You've seen how big Apex and what Call of Duty has done with a battle royale mode. I think, they'd be foolish to not add that feature into the game.
Yeah, I think that's inevitable. I think a battle royale is absolutely inevitable with Halo. It especially depending on which direction they take gameplay, which is still shocking. Why haven't we seen gameplay with it that I think would give us a better direction? That even if it's a blend of classic and new Halo gameplay, I think it still molds itself well to the battle royale idea and that like genre of game, and at least a playlist of that game. I definitely think there's room for that. My biggest change, and I kind of was thinking about this last night when I was proposing the question. My biggest thing this keeps being mentioned. Halo Infinite keeps being mentioned as this. Hey, this has got to be its God of War. It's got to be its return to form. It's got to be this new lease on life for this franchise, like God of War 2018 was. I think, especially given what we've seen from the Discover Hope trailer that we saw at E3 last year, I think that the game is going to be one continuous cut, like within it, kind of like God of War, like 1917, where it's filmed from, it'll come in and out of Chief's visor to do to go into third person when they're doing cinematics and stuff like that. But I think it's going to be all one cut. I don't think there's going to be, or there's not going to be any cuts within the game. I think it's going to be one continuous shot the whole time. And I think that's taking that. I think they were early enough in development, and God of War was late enough into development to where they saw, okay, they're doing it this way. Like, it was early enough that they could adjust with that, where God of War was shown in 2016 for the first time in a playable state, that, I think that's well enough time that, and early enough in Halo Infinite's development that they could really do that. And I'm talking campaign, obviously, but I think a lot of people are leaning on campaign more than previous Halo titles before with Halo Infinite and the importance it has, because not just multiplayer, but just because multiplayer is such a big boom right now and still is, and it's so prevalent in gaming now, online multiplayer, that it's just a given that that's there, that I think people just expect for Halo Infinite's multiplayer to just be there no matter what, in a good way. Because even Halo 5, like, it's not, it's nowhere near what fans really want out of Halo, but they're continuously like adding new things to Halo 5's multiplayer. They're still updating it. There's still, there's still a scene for Halo 5's multiplayer, no matter how small or big it is. Like, it's supported. So I don't think people are worried about that. I think it's now they're starting to look and say, okay, well, what else? Because that's just expected. And I think really it is that campaign multiplayer, or that campaign perspective, and leaning in on that narrative. And even just from what we've seen from the 2 trailers that we've seen of it, you could clearly tell they're going for more cinematic. They're going for a much more emotional pull out of you playing this game.
Yeah, and with Halo 4, if you didn't like the multiplayer, at least the campaign was definitely
the story was fucking awesome. I didn't like the Forerunner stuff, but I still loved the story that they told with it.
Right, but with Halo 5, it felt like if you didn't like the multiplayer, you definitely probably weren't going to like the campaign either. There was nowhere for someone who was a classic Halo fan to go with that game, unfortunately.
No, absolutely, totally. Well, that's our answers for this. Now it's your turn. Reach out to us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Our email in the description of our Twitter account. Make sure you reach out to us on there. Let us know what you think the answer to this question is, and we'll read it on next week's show, potentially. So, by all means, reach out to us on there. And Mike, with that being said, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of the show. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on interwebs, talk about Halo Infinite, and all the cool Xbox shiznit that's going on right now.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER, and you can find me on Twitch at MP_ToySoldier.
Nice. And as always, I'm your host, Travis Wade, aka Travlis, on most internet platforms, including Twitter at Travlis_, that's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travlis_, same as Twitter, and if you want to play some video games with me, you could do so over on Xbox Live and really any other platform, as I've been saying. So that's just regular Travlis, TRAVLESS, no underscore. Get that underscore out of here. So with that being said, this is going to be your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming news, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get a podcast at, and rate us, review us, all that jazz. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. With that being said, Mike, it's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you so much for everyone for listening, sharing, and being a part of this growing community. Game on, wash your hands, Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.